streaming live. I will entreat the first seat is taken. So I will entreat mentioning the 87 line backwards. Please move forward. Ekow, come to the front. You're a guest speaker. Come with your team. Samika, the president, go high. It's your day. Come to the front, please. So if you can just come to the front. Yeah. So the latecomers do not disturb us when they come in. Yeah. Some people are still sitting down. Please. How long now? What's your question? Okay. Thank you very much. The series of the classroom engagement series. The theme for today is delivering quality secondary education. A paradigm shift needed. Before we proceed any further, I would like to call on Reverend Yankson to give us an opening prayer.
May I ask that we kindly stand up for the opening prayer. Let us pray. Our gracious God and our Father, we want to thank you for this time, for your grace which has sustained us through this day up to this point. We want to thank you at this meeting for the role of the gospel in transforming education in our country. We thank you for what you are doing through MOBA, the programs they've lined up. Your word teaches us that the pursuit of wisdom is good. So as we gather this evening, we pray that your presence will be with us. We ask for your blessing upon the speakers. We ask for your blessing upon the hearers. We pray that you lead us in our discussion time, that at the end of it all, we pray that this program would impact our nation. We want to thank you that you've heard us, because we've prayed in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Yankson. Reverend Yankson is of the MOBA 69 year group, and he's our official, the MOBA official priest. We shall now sing the school song, and can we have somebody lead us?
Somebody who can sing in tune. Nobody. James.
Let's stand and sing this song. And, we'll do the first and the last bit. For all the saints, 1, 2.
For all the saints who from their labours rise, who live by faith for the one conference. By name, O Jesus, shall be forever blessed. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. From ocean's farthest coast, to hills of the stream, in the countless host, singing to Father, the Son, and Holy Ghost.
Thank you very much. You can sit now.
Now call on the Busiapenian of MOBA, Captain Paul Fojo, MOBA 73, to give us a welcome address.
Thank you, KB. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this second MOBA engagement series. First of all, I'd like to sincerely apologize for the late start. The traffic has been bad, but I guess we also have that Ghanaian disease of being late. So we hope others will join us. I am particularly encouraged by the very topic that the year groups chose. It seems to fall in line with what is the major thing in the country right now, albeit it's more about funding for the secondary schools and all the arguments that are coming up. Definitely, we all agree that if government is intervening and putting money in education, it is great, and we're all happy about it. But I guess the debates will continue. For tonight, we have four panelists and a moderator, all from the four panelists from the sponsoring year groups and the moderator from MOBA 66. The moderator, I believe you all know, he's a well-known educationalist. He's one of the people who've made it in circles, international circles, as having a great impact and most important effect on education in Ghana and beyond. I find it also very interesting that amongst the crowd here, as I look, we've got other educationalists who are excellent to the core, and I really hope the panelists have their stuff well together, because I see some people in the crowd who know their stuff inside out. In fact, I was telling one of them that we are about to go to him and take him as a consultant on a particular issue with education. So I feel excited, and I hope you also do, because I'm sure you're really going to have a good time this evening with us here. I won't say any much more because I'm not really supposed to be talking much. All I'm supposed to be doing is to say a nice big warm welcome to you all, especially to those who are not all students of Mfantsipim, friends from Mfantsipim, or from other schools. I like to acknowledge Professor Sekyi, who's here, who's the president of the Wesley Girls, and this is not Accra Wesley Girls, Cape Coast Wesley Girls, All Students Association, who is present here. She's also an educationalist. So without saying too much more, I'll leave it to the moderator to continue the good work. Thank you all, and welcome again.
Thank you. I'll be brief as well. The tradition at Mfantsipim, at least when we got there, was at speech day for the head prefect to deliver a speech extempore. I was just watching Paul, who was assistant head boy. He delivered all that extempore. So he's carried on the tradition. Our moderator today, Mr. Anis Haffar, was actually a panelist last year. Last year's topic also bordered on education. And this year he's become the moderator. A lot has been written about him in the brochure, so I'm not going to go much into it. Just Paul has said he's a member of the 6-year group. He's an author, a columnist, a leadership coach, trainer of teachers, among other things. He writes a column in the graphic, so you can catch up with him anytime there. Mr. Anis Haffar is MOBA 66. I'm 76. He tends to call me, to bully me all the time, but he's my big brother. So please, I hand over to Mr. Anis Haffar.
President of the sponsoring youth groups, and we have wonderful representation from Wesley Girls, not just the kids, but some kingpins who are here, queen pins who are here. And let's give a hand to Gifty Annan. She's back there. Thank you for your moral support. We can't do without you. And then there's Professor Ekow. She's also here. Shall we give her a hand, please? Now, for those of you who don't know some of the things that are happening on the educational front, Professor Sekyi and the husband at Dukwe have set up a medical school, Accra College of Medicine. And, it started with 7 students, and then it moved on to 12 students. Today we have about 30 students, and the chances are next year there won't be enough room for medical students. So let's give the young lady a hand. Let's give the young lady a hand. Next time we say we will see something. We've gone beyond people now. We also want to say a big thank you to our big brother and senior, Andrew Akutu. Dr. Akutu, shall we rise and get a bow, please? He's been with us through thick and thin, and it's good to see you. I remember when we did the launching of the Mfantsipim book here, for him, he paid in dollars. He said, this is too important, I'm not going to pay in cedis. And I haven't forgotten that. We also want to say a big thank you for coming, Senior Right. What is Senior Right? All right, give the young man a hand. Give the young man a hand. Okay, now let's start the ball rolling. We're going to give about 10 minutes to each of the speakers. But before we begin, I want to give you a little background to our first speaker. In the person of Professor Prof. William Kojo Yankson. Now, he's Professor of Geography with interest in urban planning, governance, decentralization, industrialization, and regional development. And he came to Mfantsipim for his A-levels from St. Peter's Secondary School at Akotia, and then he's been everywhere. He went to McGill University in Montreal, Canada. He was also did his doctoral studies in University of Nottingham, and also did a PhD in United Kingdom, and worked with aerospace and so on. Now, he's from Legon. I've always had fights with Legon because I think that we should focus more on the practical aspects than having departments that are all theory oriented. So today, he's going to tell us about some of the things that we can do, the practical things. And for him especially, the person who comes to mind is Kwejo Agre in the 1920s, who said, "Don't tell me what you know, show me what you can do." This was addressing the intellectuals of his day. Now, he's going to speak, this is his brief here. The education is an important component of the development process. And then we're looking at how the education cycle will continue to be critical in the production of Ghana's human resource. And we know, many times we think that the most important resource are the gold, timber, bauxite, and the rest of it. We've had this since 1900. Look at this now. So he's going to look at how the human resource can be developed in its entirety. So without any further ado, let's welcome the professor. Let's give him a round applause. Prof, over to you. Yes, please. Would you feel comfortable sitting there? You want to be here?
No, I think being a teacher.
You want to be on your feet? Very good.
Well, 10 minutes and the timekeeper sitting right in front and is going to be brutally strict. The essence of education well known, without which a country's progress would certainly not be what it ought to be. But we also know that education doesn't come cheap. A lot of things that go into it and makes education play its role effectively. Ghana has gone through various cycles in terms of education. The old traditional one, then there was a reform, and then now we are into something else. The quality education is key. Now, quality education, the views about quality education are many, and they revolve around the 4 themes that have been selected for this interaction. Content and the way it is taught, subjects and the way it is taught is one of the themes. So curriculum is important, pedagogy is important, but then there are issues about governance and management and all that, which together make education the quality education that we all desire. The country has had its golden age in terms of education in the past, but the quality, it seems to have declined in recent years. In fact, in the last 2 decades or so, perception about quality has been so negative that concerns have been raised, and we ought to address those concerns. Now, with regards to curriculum and pedagogy, there are 2 issues which are critical. That is for secondary education. And please, secondary education is a very broad area comprising 4 or so streams. We have the regular secondary education, then we have the vocational technical education, agricultural education, and so on and so forth. I think I'll be in a better position to talk about the regular secondary education. I don't know much about technical education, vocational, and also the agricultural education. But the regular secondary schools, some of them have combination of academic and also technical subjects in the past. But we seem to have lost some of these intrinsic qualities of secondary school that we're able to combine. Mfantsipim, for instance, is an example of that. Quality education and particularly cognitive achievement was in the past very high, but evidence suggests that there is a decline in cognitive achievement in recent years, and why that is so, there are so many factors. expansion of the educational system in the context of stagnating funding, dramatic increase in enrollment of education, resulting in disproportionate resource allocation in terms of education, in terms of resource, teachers vis-a-vis students. So teacher-student ratio has changed for the worse, increasing use of inexperienced teachers and all that. Large numbers of teachers that have left the classroom and they are into other sectors of the economy or have even left the shores of the country. Pedagogy itself consists of reading and reproducing what it is in the textbooks, with little emphasis on scientific and practical problem solving. Research indicates that indeed knowledge among SHS students, particularly among rural-based SHS students, is low, and this is from Amuah Mensah's led report of 2001. There are other research results also that show that pedagogy has been the main weak link in our educational system rather than even management or governance. It's limited use of ICT in sources materials, for instance, teaching materials. Now there is that opportunity. During our time, we didn't have computer, we didn't have ICT, but we depended on the textbooks and the rest, and we had no choice. Today, there is so much by way of resources, but how are we using that? E-books, e-learning. Our libraries are not up to date in terms of stock of books. Labs are not there. Delivery itself, teaching itself is also problematic. Relevance of what we are taught for our current situation in terms of the job market and all that. So there are so many problems that the system is fraught with, and therefore there's a need to really address this. So in addressing quality education, there are several dimensions. The curriculum is only one aspect. My other colleagues will talk about the other aspects. What we have to do to correct the situation, in fact, in the literature, there are several approaches, two key approaches in addressing quality issues. And these are called the component and relation approaches. Component approaches deal with individual issues and how to correct them. Relation approaches deal with how the individual issues are related and how correcting one issue means tackling the other issues. Otherwise, the job will not be fully done. In other words, if you correct one issue, there are related issues that ought to be taken on board. So, as a way of proposing a few, there is the need for school management, for instance, to implement systematic changes that will support and promote overall teaching and learning quality. And that, I think, the details will be presented by a colleague who will talk on governance and management. The Ghana Education Service itself, the strategic plan, the Ghana Education Strategic Plan 2010-2020 emphasizes the teacher preparation and deployment, and then the need to have well-trained and well-supported teachers in secondary school. So the government itself has recognized that, and its plans, development plans, try to address that one. Dupas and Johnson, for instance, their study on secondary education in Ghana, they concluded the need for more to be done to improve teacher pedagogical abilities, although it must be admitted that the study drew data primarily from the rural senior high schools. The need for training of teachers to be effective in classroom to lead the learning process is very urgent. However, having well-trained and well-supported teachers appear not to be enough. For there is a need to create world-class schools That requires strong systems, not just people. So the need for systems, governance system, management systems, and the incentive systems and all that must go hand in hand with the training of teachers and that of improving pedagogy. So there is therefore a case for having strong systems in place in schools to support teaching and learning. There's also a need to develop a professional learning community at schools. The need to foster a school culture where teacher collaboration, learning from each other and supporting each other in a sort of a professional learning community is urgent. In these professional learning communities, teachers will share their best practices with one another and promote and sustain professional development and skills and practice among themselves. And research elsewhere has shown that this community of professionals and how they support each other and learn from each other is very, very important. We should also find a way of maximizing the need to adopt measures, and this will go to the school management system to maximize the use of resources for students. We need to maximize students' use of available resources during and outside class time, including access to teachers, teaching resources, and fellow students. We also need to promote student-centered learning during class times. For example, giving students more opportunities to work in groups or to self-organize. And after lesson clubs, group investigations, and study sessions that support and extend the main work done for the curriculum. And research across the world has shown that the amount of time students spend in schools engaged in learning activities actually make a difference in their overall performance. So making the most of time in school in learning activities that maximize the use of resources, including human resources, can improve the quality of learning. We can also draw on resources like old teachers who are very experienced, who have retired, and who can lend their support. There's a need overall for a comprehensive and integrated approach to quality improvement. And since my time is short, I'll just conclude by saying that relevance of education, and here we're talking about syllabi, we are talking about subjects and how the subjects have changed over time. The old subjects have expanded and changed in several directions. In the universities, we see these things. But how much of it happens in the secondary school curriculum? I study geography, and geography has changed over the years. From geography I learned in A levels to geography now, and even when I was a student. And now, it has changed so much. And so we should introduce some of these new things into our curricula. Achieving quality education, secondary education, therefore requires careful planning and execution, an integrated approach involving the key components and their relational issues is of critical importance to ensure success. There is a clear need also to reorient secondary school curricula and pedagogy in order to enhance the relevance of secondary school education in the context of the current globalization, information technology, knowledge economy, and the future is, we should take the future into consideration. We should not always operate in the past. So curriculum and development must be, a continuing and ongoing process. And I think that in doing so, the universities must be brought on board. In fact, I have operated at the universities for 36 years. I've just started my 37th year. My experience in secondary school was only 1 year when I taught at Agri School after graduation. But I can see what is happening in the universities and how the need for change in terms of teaching methods and curriculum ought to be introduced at the secondary school level. So because of shortness of time, I think that I've just highlighted some of the key points. So when it's time for discussion, there could be questions and then contributions from the floor. Thank you very much for listening.
Good. What I'll suggest is that you keep an eye on the notes, some of the observations, because the questions and answers will come later on towards the end. But there are a couple of things that I wanted to add before the next speaker. He's talking about e-learning. Professor Yankson was talking about electronic learning, talking about e-books and the rest of it. I don't know if you remember when I talked about allowing children to use smartphones in Ghana. How many of you saw that front page of the graphic? Hey, trouble, I'm telling you, my phone started ringing at 6:31 in the morning. So what do you mean? You know, but then I don't want to be a hypocrite. I used to teach computers in the United States in 1980s. And I come to my own country and I'm supposed to be a hypocrite and say, we can't use those things. So that is the issue now. But whether we like it or not, we are beginning to accept that e-learning and so on. I just want to add a couple of points to it before we continue. Now, last week, I was with the Haffar community. And these are people who've never been to school before. But even they, who've never been to school, are interested in getting on the digital platform. So hopefully, I'm liaising with IBM and United Way to see how we can even take e-learning, digital learning to people who've never even been to school before. And what about the rest of us? Very good. So there are a lot of issues that have to be discussed here, even especially in terms of pedagogy. In our time, remember, chew, pour, pass, and forget. And then I added another one, chew, pour, pass, forget, and then be poor, which is what we've been since 1987. So these are the issues, and I hope that the questions will be directed that way. Good. Now moving on to our next speaker. This is the first time we've met. This is Dr. Manful. He graduated from the School of Agriculture, University of Cape Coast in 1984. And then he was a teacher at Mfantsipim. Then in 1987, I hope he was not doing teaching the chew, pour, pass, and forget business. And then come here and tell us how we should do e-learning. No, we did, yeah, bro. Okay. And then he has 2 master's degrees from the Federal Center for Potato and Cereal Processing in Germany. And then Kwame University of Science and Technology. And he was also a visiting scientist at Purdue University, Indiana, in the US. And also in the US Department of Agriculture. This guy is really a person next to my heart because I have some challenges for him too. Now, who are we speaking about? This is Professor John Manful. And he's going to talk to us about what the senior high school product should be like. Let's give the young man a hand. Let's give the young man a hand. Yeah.
Mr. Moderator, there was guests, old boys, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to do very little reading because he has threatened me 3 times that he'll cut me if I don't stick to time. He's threatened me, so I'll do very little reading, and when he tells me to stop, I'll be a good boy and I'll stop. You see, the free SHS policy is probably the hottest topic in Ghana today. And, but in typical fashion, I believe that what is going to happen is that this is going to fade into the background very soon. And another issue is going to come up. And all the teething problems that we are talking about, we probably will forget it till next year, when we want to get a new batch of students into HSS. Laudable as this policy may be, it is only one, albeit an important piece in a very complicated jigsaw puzzle. Because when you fix one, you see that so many things are not in place and you have to continue fixing it. But if you don't have a clue as to how you want the final product to be, you will just be going round in circles and we'll be where we were probably year in, year out and trying to fix it. But in typical Mfantsipim June Chakan style, I think what we need to do is to constantly think, strategize for, and stay one step ahead of the many challenges that this bold adventure, and I called it an adventure, would throw at us. I think a few minutes ago as we sat out there, Mr. Freeman was seriously questioning why they didn't say free HSS for public schools? They said free HSS. Why and the private schools? There's so many of these things. When you see the answers coming up, you can clearly tell that it wasn't thought through. These are reactive responses that we are getting, but I believe that we need to seriously think about this. The quality of the SHS product, as I'm supposed to be talking about, is actually the kind of SHS product graduate that we want to see, and I'm happy that these young ladies are here. I believe that these are the kind of products that we want to see. And this is the yardstick, the product, the end result is the yardstick by which any HSS program is going to be measured. Because irrespective of what we do, we want to see what has come out of it and how it is, whether it's good or not, that we can say that we have succeeded in doing this or not. This product is just not a product of 3 years in SHS, but it is a product of, or just senior high school education, but it is a product which begins probably at life, at birth. So parents, teachers, the broader society, for that matter, government, by extension, the facilities that are provided at school, all have a role to play in shaping this kind of product. So it is not a matter for the students alone. It is not for the teachers alone, the parents. And I believe that our parents are our longest teachers. They start teaching us from birth, and they probably, when all the teachers have been fed up with us and thrown out of their class and giving us degrees because they want us to go away, our parents are still there. So I think that this is the kind of thing that I want to bring up, that this is a collaborative effort. But if we are not careful, we will deliver a product which is not fit for purpose. And I think that it is very, very clear that some of the products which are coming out are not fit for purpose. I think that the moderator talked about, I didn't want to put it, I tried to be very diplomatic. I said that, this is what I wrote down. But classically, our schools have turned out graduates that have gone to classes, they've been taught, they've copied notes, they've learned, and they've passed exams. And he put it, what? Chew, pour, pass, forget, and then be poor. We've added another one. And this is it. And what are the expectations of the young people who are coming out of school? They are looking to be employed somewhere. That's all. So if you go to school, you get a degree or you get a qualification or whatever, you are employed somewhere, you've succeeded. End of story. However, this kind of product is not fit for purpose. And that's what we are producing. Our students should be taught to be more creative, to be more innovative, to be more entrepreneurial, and to constantly think out of the box. Constantly think out of the box. Because the world which we are seeing now is not the world of 10 years ago or 20 years ago, or even the world of 5 years ago. Students should be encouraged to broaden their outlook beyond the subjects that they are taught in class. And I'm going to digress and say a little story. About 4 or 5 years ago, I ran a research project from my base then in Benin, in Cotonou. And then I had collaborators from the University of Milan, the French institution, and then I had to take 2 African countries. I was in Cotonou, so I chose Benin, and obviously the next one was Ghana. And that project included taking students from here and taking them out into Europe to do part of their study. The Ghanaian students were supposed to go into Milan, the University of Milan. So we chose graduate students, master's students, students who have done 1 year of their master's who want to continue into their second year. And I'm not going to say the universities in which they came from, but for sure they are from the 3 major main premier universities in Ghana, Cape Coast, Accra, and Kumasi. That's where we got those students from. And then we took them to go and do their final year of their master's program in Milan. From time to time, I followed them up. And then I met some of these students. I'm not going to say where they are from. And they said, Doctor, can you do something for us? Can you speak to our professor so they give us 1 week off? I was telling this to somebody yesterday. He said, what are you going to do with 1 week off? I said, we want to do some sightseeing. I said, fine, that's great. You've come to Italy, spending some time here, you want to do so. But where do you want to go? He said, we want to go to Rome. Why Rome? Do you have friends or relatives there? No, because we've heard of Rome is the capital we want to see. And I said, hey, you are in Milan. Milan is equally good. There's so many things you can do in the north of Italy. Go to Venice. Then their faces changed. What? Venice? We haven't heard of it before. They haven't heard of Venice before. And I said, have you heard of the Merchant of Venice? Just by chance, it's not a fable. They said, no. Then I said, look, you get a train from here. If you don't want to go straight, and Venice is wonderful, go to Verona, go to Padua. It's just on the same road. Stay there overnight on Friday evening. Go and explore in Venice. What is Venice? Then I said, from there, go to Florence. Venice, they hadn't heard. Florence was like a lady's name. They hadn't heard it before. And I asked, have you heard of Michelangelo? Michelangelo? He said, no. And I said, you know how I learned of Michelangelo? I'll tell you what, get your, they go on the internet every time. I don't know what they go and do. And I said, Google biography Michelangelo. And then you will know why I learned of Michelangelo, and I've never forgotten about Michelangelo. Is there anybody here who knows? And they looked, they opened, and they said, we know. Because Michelangelo was born on the 6th of March, 14 something. I've forgotten. But once I knew somebody was born on the 6th of March, I never forgot that name. I was in high school. I was in secondary school, Kwaboche. In the library, that library up there, that's where I first learned of it. So when I went to Italy and they said Michelangelo was from Florence, I said, I'll go and see. And I said, when you go, there are so many museums there. You go into one of them and you see David. And not Professor Foreje, I'm sorry. And I said, have you, well, they hadn't heard of it before. They hadn't heard of Florence, they hadn't heard of Michelangelo, they don't know about David. And I said, Google David Michelangelo. And one said, I've seen this sculpture before. And I said, yes, that is David. So they got interested and they went. But these are graduate students. One of the things that we should teach these young people to do, and I think that we should, is to teach them to be on their own. It is already tough if you want students. Everybody's looking for an employment. But I think that our students should first get a job, learn for a few years as a stepping stone to being on your own. I was talking to Professor Yankson a little bit ago about our retiring age. At 60, you are strong. At 60, you are very, 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 very active. But if you don't want to retire at 60, then you have to be on your own and work till you drop if you want to do it. If you become an employee, you have to go home and sit home and retire at 60. It's not fun. And I don't know how many of us have thought about it. That the only way not to for sure retire at 60 is not to be an employee. But we want our students to be employees. I think that these are the things that we want to be thinking about. However, time is not on our side. It is not on our side. And we have to devise creative means to adequately equip our students through distance learning, e-learning modules, and all the things that we are talking about. We have to reward creativity, independence of thought and inventiveness. But we have a very big problem, very, very big, and I don't think anybody is probably thinking about it. Who are going to do this teaching? The people who are supposed to be taught to teach these students were not taught that way. So we have a problem, and this is where we have to start thinking. Some of these things will probably have to be on the internet. I don't know, probably during our time, and I believe that those who went before us in Mfantsipim, there were English lessons on television or something, and we had to go and sit in the assembly hall and listen to everyday English and that kind of thing. I believe that these things are available. I believe that this is where we should be telling our students and teaching them. I don't understand why somebody who has done an engineering degree or a science degree or an ICT student cannot come up with something new. I don't know what it is. Professor Yankson will probably, because he is full-time into it. I know that it is only when you do a doctorate degree that you are asked to come up with something new. Now, I don't even think that we are insisting. I've seen a few doctorate degree theses and there's nothing new in it. But when some of us were in school at that point, you had to have one chapter. At the end of your thesis, you have to write what is new. All the rubbish that you have written, put it aside. What is new? What is your contribution to knowledge? Why do you have to wait till somebody does a doctorate degree before he's able to contribute to knowledge? The vast majority of people don't even want to dream to do a doctorate degree. So if you don't want to do it, you are not contributing to knowledge. I believe that at a much earlier age, our students should be encouraged to contribute to knowledge. And if they do encourage them at much younger ages to contribute to knowledge, we'll be getting somewhere. I would end up now with a little bit of a story about my teenage son. I was driving into school a couple of days ago, and we went over a speed ramp, and I went, bam. He said, "Oh, why? You didn't see that?" I said, "No." And he told me that is why a new speed ramp is being devised, which has got a fluid in it. And I said, "How do you know?" He said, "I found it on the internet. I was studying and I found it." "Are you sure?" I said, "Okay, he told me, we're going to school. So he said, give me your phone and I will show you." So he Googled it. He said, "Stop." And I stopped. And then we went through and I said, yes, it's true. In Spain, somebody has come up with a speed ramp which has got a fluid in it. And he says that if you drive slowly over it, it's like you're going over water, just bumps. But the viscosity of that fluid changes immediately you drive fast. So it's your speed that makes the speed ramp hard. This boy had seen it, never seen it before. I thought, but the fact of the matter, and I was happy, because I know when he goes onto the internet, probably this is what he's looking at, and not all the kind of things which are local people. But maybe it's wishful thinking. Maybe it's wishful thinking. And I believe that this is where we should be heading our children. I would want to stop here, the timekeeper. Thank you very much for giving me.
You know, this is the digital age. And I have a little short story for you. Do you remember when we had the Mobitel about 20 years ago? Do you remember? Good. And remember how they used to send the bills? I mean, you don't scratch. They send you a monthly statement. And these were in dollars that were converted into CDs. Remember? One day, I got my bill. It was this long. And I was looking at the bill. Did I make all these calls? And then I looked at the phone and realized that there's a possibility that you can lock the phone. Just as I was trying to figure out who's been playing with my phone, then my little girl comes up. She was about this high. She looks at me, she looks at the phone and says, "Daddy, what are you trying to do?" And I didn't say anything, I was shaking. She said, "Are you trying to lock it?" and then the next question was, do you know how? I wanted to lock it, she was right. Do I know how? I didn't know how, she was right. And then she looked at me and said, "Do you want me to show you?" I asked her. And you know, this is the digital age. And then I was being hesitant. He said, "Daddy, I will show you how to unlock it." He said, look on the phone in the right-hand corner. Do you see a key that says lock? Yes. And I said, yes. He said, "Press it." I pressed it and he said, "Unlock." He said, "Good." So she was walking away and then she comes back. "Do you know how to unlock it?" "Do you want me to show you?" I said, "Oh." Eventually what she said was this: "I will show you on condition that I watch television on Wednesday. Because in my house, you don't watch television during the week." He said, "Make up your mind, I'm busy. Do you want me to show you or not?" I had to settle for her to watch television on Wednesday. But before she left, she said, "Hey, now you have to pay me 10,000. Now this is a look-in. I've gone everywhere, seen a lot. My hair, my beard was still gray. But this is the digital age. So these are the things that I want us to begin to look at. But then there was something else too that I think we should begin to look at. Let's look at Kwame University of Science and Technology. Look at these light bulbs here. We've been doing research and electrical systems from 1900 up to that first time. We can't produce a light bulb. In my own house, I've had the electric meters removed and replaced about 4 times, all made in China. But here we have University of Science and Technology. So back to your question again. If you are looking at the product of the senior high school, that is the most impressionable age. If we can't do much at that point in time, by the time we get older, it's too late because we are trying to pay for bills now. So these are the things we want to begin to look at as we look at the product that is supposed to be senior high school. We want to look at that. But then for those of you who are asking questions, there's a question that I hope one of you asked our last speaker. Can we introduce greenhouses in our secondary schools so that we are working with our hands and we are learning how to feed ourselves at the same time? Good. Now, our next speaker, Ekow, Amuah Sekyi. He's a solicitor and a barrister at law. He's a lawyer. He's the managing partner of Amuah Sekyi and Company. And, but he's held quite a few positions. He was a solicitor for Takoradi Flour Mill and also Ghana Shippers Council and the Wassa Fiase Traditional Council and the Ahanta Traditional Council. Now he's going to speak to us on governance. So let's pay attention to him as he speaks to that and have your questions ready. Thank you so much, young man. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I must say that it is a great honor to be nominated by your own peers to be their advocate on this theme. Actually, it feels like being selected by the coach of Black Stars to be in the first 11 to play your home matches in Congo. I looked hard at the theme when it was presented to me, and I detected that there was no question mark after the paradigm shift needed. So this meant that by this theme, we agree that we need a shift. That is, it's not up for discussion. The issue is that we do need a shift. But as you all know, there are some people who do think that the good old days were better than now. So you, as the last speaker did say, there were times where we used to listen to everyday English and all that. That has also changed. So the shift doesn't mean always to go forward. We can also go backwards. So when we discuss, when it gets to discussion time, I'll be grateful to hear your views on whether we need to rather go back and not forward, though it's a digital age. I am to touch on governance regarding the delivery of quality education in Ghana. We are all aware that all secondary schools are under the ambit of the Ghana Education Service, that is GES. And this means that the teachers are employees of the GES. It is therefore the GES which can discipline, transfer, or dismiss teachers. It is the GES which promotes or demotes teachers. And it is the GES which also pays the teachers. So, to all and sundry, including myself when I was a student, who thought that your school fees were used to pay salaries of teachers, please revise your notes. It is the government which actually pays the salaries of teachers. And now, almost all schools, almost all secondary schools are government schools. You are well aware that there used to be mission schools. And by mission schools, I mean schools that were built by churches. Examples abound. You have the Methodists, which built Mfantsipim and Wesley Girls. The Anglicans built at the Sadao. The Catholics built Holy Child and St. Augustine's. And there are so many others. At that time, the schools were the properties of the churches, and the churches maintained and governed the schools. But as time went on, maintenance of the schools, as well as payment of salaries of the teachers, became difficult for the churches, and therefore the state intervened. So now we do have full government schools, that is schools which were specifically established by the government, like Achimota School. It's not a mission school. The government itself built that school, and that's wholly government. Then you have the mission schools, which have now become known as government-assisted schools, like Mfantsipim, Holy Child, Prempeh College. They are all assisted by the government. The churches still maintain a percentage of autonomy in their schools, but it's still the government which cracks the whip, since he who pays the piper calls the tune. The old student associations and the parent-teacher associations do have a very strong influence over the affairs of the school, such as in a selection of headmasters, siting of classrooms, dormitories, etc. And so also that the church maintain some sort of administrative hold over the schools. And so all mission schools still have what is known as education units, but these still fall under the GS. So we have the Catholic Education Unit, Anglican Education Unit, Islamic Education Unit, etc. And these education units see to the actual governance of the schools. And each education unit is headed by a regional manager who has direct oversight responsibility over the mission schools in the region. The question now stands as to whether the present system as it stands needs to be changed, or, as some people even advocate, whether the whole system should be overhauled for a complete takeover by the churches. We must bear in mind that whether there's a complete takeover or not, all schools in Ghana fall under the Ministry of Education. It is the ministry which is the overall watchdog. Even when it comes to totally private schools like Tema Secondary, GIS, it still falls under the Ministry of Education. And the ministry acting through the GS can close down a school if it fails to meet some requirements. Therefore, there's a school of thought that should the schools be handed over to the churches, there's bound to be much greater quality education. Then also, there are some skeptics who have maintained that we might end up, if we do this, producing premier elitist schools for the very top students, but totally out of reach for the ordinary Ghanaian. So what do we do? When it gets to that, the school fees definitely will be astronomically high, but then all facilities too are in tip-top shape, and there'll be no excuse for any sloppiness. But does it mean that some schools like Mfantsipim at Saddle and Co will close the doors to the brilliant son of a carpenter or a watchman, and only a certain quality or class of students can enter such schools? When the missionaries came, if they had done this, we wouldn't have had any Philip Kwekus, Georgia Fergusons. They all went to these mission schools, but at that time, the aim of these missionaries were not to set up these schools for profit. But now you need classrooms, you need to pay the salaries of teachers. So clearly, it is a profit-making venture. So I do think that there should be a shift, but we should tread cautiously. It would be more justifiable for the school boards themselves to take a much hands-on approach in the governance of their schools. When you have a very strong school board, with or without government influence and or intervention, you can make a school great. And if you add this to a vibrant PTA, the image of any school can be uplifted. Then also, I also think that when you strengthen the various education units under the mission schools, as I said earlier, the education units are headed by a regional manager. If the regional managers are given much more greater power in the administration of their schools, I think we shall create a much more better quality education system than we have now. So by so doing, we intermingle the advantages of a total takeover with that of the financial burden of the church. Because as I always say, when the churches take over, they will shift the burden to the high school fees. And then when this happens, clearly the parents will bear the brunt. So if the government still maintains the salaries of the teachers, but the churches act over the governance of the schools through their regional managers, I think we can maintain an even balance. As I said, this is a very short speech. I'm ending here and opening the floodgates for questions and answers on this issue. So I would, without much ado, I'll thank, as I said, my year group for nominating me, and then hand over to the moderator for question time as when we finish. I'm very grateful.
What I didn't say earlier about Ekow is that I have a bone to pick with him. The man came and did his O-levels at Mfantsipim and scored good grades, and he ran away to Achibota. But anyway, when it comes to governance, pay attention to how the private schools are run. And then ask yourselves, if Mfantsipim, for example, becomes just a predominantly Methodist school or a government school, how will it run? Now, these are the critical issues. For example, here we look at, let me tell how the system in Ghana works. This man has taught for 20 years English in a particular school, so he becomes a headmaster. Or this person has taught mathematics for 15 years, he becomes a headmaster. It doesn't work like that, too. School management is a different animal. You want to learn how to raise funds. You want to learn how to increase teacher morale. You want to do all sorts of things, especially when you look at plant and maintenance, which is something that we never do here. So when we begin to look at it, for me, it's not just a matter of whether the government or the mission schools are going to run the schools, but are we going to run the schools professionally? I've seen schools that are run professionally in this country. So let's begin to look at the ones that are being run well, and see how we can begin to emulate some of the same things. And then also, decentralization. How can the Ministry of Education here in Accra manage a school in Wa? I was there about 2 weeks ago. Or school in the Mampusi area. Decentralization is very, very important so that people in the communities are the ones who are really in charge of the schools, because that's where their children are. So when the questions come, I would like us to begin to look at some of these larger issues. Now, going on to our last speaker, Lord Ebenezer Freeman. He's going to be talking to us about funding. I don't know if you knew about funding before the free senior high school thing came, and especially where private schools too are saying, Charlie, don't leave us behind, though. Yes, we want some of the funding. Now, he is he graduated with the highest cumulative weighted average at KNUST. Let's give the young man our paper. Yeah. He was also a joint winner in an academic provider's best thesis at KNUST. Let's give another one. Small point danger. And then his really interest is really in visual arts, especially at the secondary schools. So without much ado, let's welcome Lord Ebenezer Freeman. He's going to speak to us on funding.
Good evening, Mfantsipim, and all of us gathered here. My topic is funding, and I'd like to extend my appreciation to the president of my year group, Lawyer Mawina Benoto, for this honor done me. I think my aspect of this dialogue has become, in recent times, the hottest topic in town. We've intermingled it with some amount of politics. So politics and money. Talking of politics and money, someone shared a joke with me which I would want to quickly share with us. An armed robber pointed a gun at the head of a man who was very well dressed. And he said to him, "Give me your money." So the man said to him, "Do you know me? Do you know who I am? I'm a very important politician in this country." Then the robber says to him, "Oh, you're a politician. Then give me my money." Okay, so let's go into the subject of funding now. Now, free SHS. We will situate the subject of funding within the context of the free SHS program, because it has become, or it is, the government's flagship program for transforming, as it were, secondary education. I want us to quickly look at the policy summary as laid out by His Excellency the President He said, by free SHS, we mean that in addition to tuition, which is already free, there will be no admission fees, no library fees, no science center fees, no computer lab fees, no examination fees, no utility fees. There will be free textbooks, free boarding, and free meals. And these students will get a meal at school for free. Free SHS will also cover agric, vocational, and technical institutions at the high school level. Clearly, this is a giant step forward. But is it exclusively the panacea for transforming senior high school education and creating that paradigm, that shift in paradigm that we seek after? To me, the answer is no. And the reason is quite obvious. There are so many other cost centers to funding senior high school education, which clearly are not captured by the policy. So it's a good step forward, but there is more we need to do. Presently, what are the funding sources for free SHS? Government, Get Fund, internally generated funds and PTA contributions, old students contributions, and then contributions from other donors. As per the free SHS program, what funding implications will it have on the state coffers? According to the GES, about 40% of junior high school graduates who pass are not able to further to the senior high schools for lack of funding. Last year, the figure was 110,000. These students passed and were placed by the computer placement system, but could not continue into senior high school because there was no funding. Now, with this intervention, that roadblock is removed. So clearly, with this, it means that one, what is going to happen is that we are going to have an increase in students' enrollment because one, the roadblock has been removed. Two, there is a source of motivation for you to pass your junior high school exam. So clearly, having an increase in the numbers proceeding from the junior high school to the senior high school in itself means that all other funding cost centers would go up. In addition to the existing cost funding centers which will go up, you're also going to have new cost centers coming up. For instance, if per the president's statement, all free senior high school, under the free senior high school, all day students are getting a meal for free. Then for the schools which are typically, traditionally day schools, how are they going to have their meals? This means that possibly you're going to need infrastructure, dining infrastructure to house them, because you're not going to line them up and give them in packs every day and ask them to scatter all over campus and have their meals. No. So there will definitely be additional cost centers. Quickly, let's have a situational analysis. 2015-2016 academic year, there were 562 senior high schools run by the state. The education sector performance report that year revealed that without free SHS, the senior secondary subsector consumed the largest portion of government expenditure earmarked for education, 22.2% without senior high school, only without the free senior high school, only the secondary education sector. Now, for 2015-2016 again, the education sector report shows that the annual recurrent expenditure funded by government was 2,144 Ghana cedis per student. Student population in 2016 stood at 1.6 million. The estimated average annual percentage increase in student enrollment is 6%, according to the Ghana National Education Coalition campaign. So with this average annual percentage increase in enrollment, it is estimated that the intake for 2017-2018 will be about 432,780 students. Now, even if we decide to assume zero inflation and use the 2015-2016 state-funded recurrent expenditure amount of 2,144 per student, this gives us an expected expenditure of 916,896,920 Ghana cedis. We cannot go into the figures for our GRIC, the technical and the vocational training schools, which are also covered under the policy. Now, let's quickly look at funding sustainability. Government says it will direct a large chunk of proceeds from our natural resources and our oil revenues into funding the free senior high school program. Good move. But two things we need to remember. First, these commodities are subject to fluctuations based on world market prices. Secondly, these are finite, exhaustible resources. Is that what we are going to bench our funding on? No, clearly we need something better. So we need something that we more or less can ring fence and be sure that we're going to get this source of sustainable funding for the program. How are we going to do this? My first thought is that I think agriculture has the potential to provide a sustainable source of funding for the program. As it stands now, Ghana's import bill on 8 basic food commodities stands at $2.2 billion for a year alone. Basic food items. Apart from wheat, which is covered under the 8 basic food items, all the other ones can be produced locally in the country. But 1 year, as it stands now, for a single year, we are spending $2.2 billion United States dollars to import food we can grow and even export from our country. Quickly, let's please look at parental control. Very important. Whichever way we analyze the issue, we cannot rule out the issue of parental contribution to senior high school. So the question clearly is, can the government single-handedly and fully sponsor the free senior high school program? Or do we need a collaborative effort between government, parents, and other stakeholders? For me, clearly, I defer to the latter. And the reason, again, to me is simple. For the same reasons of funding sustainability and quality delivery, the government is now shifting towards private-public partnerships in all the major sectors of our economy. So why should a critical sector as education be any different? Moving on from there, a few other recommendations before I run up, and then when we get into the question and answer sessions, we'll do the rest. I think we need to have a national dialogue on education. We have to clearly define what we mean by quality education and what we expect out of it, because that in itself would have cost implications and will help us to properly quantify the cost. Elite schools. For me, I think that parents in elite schools must be allowed to pay fees. An assessment has already been conducted, and the vast majority of parents in these senior high schools, with wards in the senior high schools, can afford to pay. Coupled with that, the old student unions in these senior high schools are very, very vibrant. They contribute a lot to the growth and the running of these senior high schools. So why pull the plugs on them? I think that priorities differ. Equity is relative. So the priorities for one category of senior high school might not be the same as the priorities for another. So I think that for the elite schools, because without being an advocate of elitism, I think that being in a school that is categorized grade A comes with its own premium. So why not allow students or parents of students who can afford to pay and channel these additional resources into the improvement of quality and excellence? Because all over the world, wherever you go, every country has and maintains centers of excellence, and we cannot rule that out. I think my time has run up. We have a few more areas we need to cover, but okay, I've been given a little more time, so 3 more minutes. Thank you very much, my president. Okay, so that is what I think about the issue of elite schools. Last month, I think we launched the so we had the Ebusiapanyin's launch. Laudable initiative. I think initiatives like that and very credible ones should be replicated and vigorously pursued. Also, we cannot hide from the fact that for sustainability of funding, we need to begin to look at possibly instituting a tax system to generate funding into our senior high school program. At the risk of sounding controversial, I want to say this. I think we need greater and consistent support from corporate Ghana. Again, I risk being controversial, but I want to say this. GNPC has for the past 5 years pumped $15 million into our Black Stars. What do we have to show for it? And education is suffering. So as a country, we must get our priorities right. If we need to enact laws to make sure that corporate Ghana is helping more, let's do it. Again, let government uphold and recognize the contributions of parents and other stakeholders. In that regard, I think that the present position that the PTA contributions are not compulsory should be reviewed immediately, because directly it drives into the heart of the IGFs, the internally generated funds. And again, it takes a certain shine of the value of contributions that parents and other stakeholders are making. I want to end here with a quote by our very own Busubru Kofi Annan. He says, "Education is a human right with immense power to transform. On its foundation rest the cornerstones of freedom, democracy, and sustainable human development." I think we all owe it to Mother Ghana and generations on board to make these words live. Thank you very much.
By the way, which house were you in? Picard? Which house were you in? Picard? No, you can't be from, but you are from Picard. This is, at my age, when I hear young men like this, I feel so elated. Because young people will take over. Let's give the young man a hand. He's brilliant. He's brilliant. Don't clap because there's nepotism there. You give him more time than the other people. Again, many times when this free senior high school business was started, I've been called so many times to speak on radio, television, and I don't go. Because to be honest with you, one, I don't want to get too controversial, and sometimes I don't even know what to say. Next time they call me, you go you take the abuse and whatever else comes out of it. But again, let's look at the reality in this country. As you walk down the street and you see these young people selling sachet water, I stopped once and asked one of the kids, why are you not in school? He said, I have finished. And this guy, and I said, how did you finish? I finished JHS. No, so you are lucky. I'm 70, I haven't finished. Whoa, you are finished. Why are they about? But the issue being that they probably didn't have money to continue secondary education. You know, so when an initiative like this is introduced, I think each one of us should be on board in terms of supporting it, and then also making the recommendations in terms of how it can be funded. The other thing I also want to say is this: how many of you have looked at the Auditor General's report in the past 10 years? You girls should do a homework. Look at the Auditor General's report for the past 10 years. Forget about who government is in power. That's why I say 10 years. Some have come, some have gone. But then let's see how the money was used. And you'll be amazed at the opportunity cost of us not directing our energies in the right place. The other thing I also want to add to what you said is this: if you look at the school feeding programs, look at Mfantsipim, for example. Why are we not growing any crops there? We are not growing bananas, plantains, corn, avocados. We are not growing anything. So again, let's look at how we can also help to sustain the schools. And then as I travel through the country, almost every school in this country can have a greenhouse where at least they are growing something. So these are the things that I want us to begin to look at. Now, having said that, I think this is the question and answer time. And I would suggest that we have about 4 questions at a time. We'll respond to those questions and then we'll go for another 4. But then make your contributions as brief as possible. So on that note, do we have an extra mic? Very good. So on that note, I think the floor is open now for questions and answers directed at any of our panelists. Not to me, to any of the panelists here. Thank you.
Good evening. Dr. Manful, fitness for purpose. Fitness for purpose. Who defines that? Who defines fitness for purpose? Is it industry? Is it parents? Should we define it to fit our environment, to fit the world we live in today? Who does that? That's my question. My name is Titi Ofe, 1973.
My name is Charles Lamte. I'm glad to meet Mfantsipim people, but I come from Achibota. And but the thing that attracts me strongly about this presentation is the word paradigm shift. And Ghana, Africa, it is said that the first university in the world comes from Mali. One thing, coming to this subject itself, an important paradigm shift is that the world should recognize that education and its benefits are not only for young people, but one of the speakers said the parents are the chief educationists. The individual has his whole lifetime to educate himself and to be employable, to create money and things like that. Ghana, some time ago, researchers had information out of which somebody came from America. Within 4 years of getting the report, he had become a billionaire, multi-billionaire. There's so much to speak.
Would you want to please direct your question at one of the panelists?
I want to contribute rather than ask a question. So.
Oh, you want to make a comment?
Yes, a comment.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Let's give the young man a hand. Good.
Yeah, Daniel Dujenfi, MOBA 90, Secretary. I direct this to Manful, my former general science teacher. Yeah, he was wondering why the great scientists and others, people don't know now. Now let's do some memory lane small. Let's look at what brought about the JHS system vis-a-vis the old system. Now, the argument they put forth was that 6 years in the primary education, 4 years in the middle school or science 7, 5 years O-levels, 2 years A-levels, and then 3 years university. That's all things being equal. When you add up, you get 20 years educating yourself. Now, let's look at the new system. We have 6 years primary education, 3 years GHS, 3 years SHS, add 3 years, 15 years. So for them, they had cut off 5 years in education. Simplicity. I see this as a fallacy of misjudgment. The reason being that they had even forgotten that not everybody went to the middle school. I went to Achimota Primary, finished class 6. So at age 11, I was in Mfantsipim. At 7 years, that was 18. And I was still moving on. I'm sure a lot of people who went to the preparatory schools also joined. There was a deliberate structure for such people. What did they do? Some of them had to come out of Science 7, became people teachers, went to do Set B, came to teach, did the Set A, and then after that, the belief was that you do private studies, O-levels, A-levels, and then made it to the university. A lot of teachers went through that system in it. But what we did to ourselves was that we were just trying to cut off some of the years, thinking that that was rather going to help us and help the youth. Now we have a category of students. I was teaching in Obuasi, Ekow United was playing Obuasi Gophers. And the student asked me, say Ekow United or Tamale. You can't blame him. He's a business student. He never had access to geography. The social studies we do was a crowded thing. They did a little bit of valleys and rivers and valleys, spare what. So a little bit of plenty thing crowded, and they would not learn history, our Ghanaian history. Some will miss out if they didn't get to SHS and deliberately decided to choose history.
Direct your question at Dr. Manful, please. Direct a specific question at him.
So yes, I'm telling him that if he is surprised, he shouldn't have been surprised because this is what has happened now.
Okay, I got you.
And because of what is happening, we seem to be losing out. Now we want practicality. Now, as the placement system came, we are all talking about the secondary education. How about the KTIs, the ATTs? What were they made for? The idea was that they should use it through the polytechnics and then go for industrial studies and what have you. Where are the industries now? Structure adjustment programs and what have you, diverse teacher. We sold all the industries. And the one who sat on it to sell sold some to himself. Now, where are the industries? We are now starting one district, one bank. So not until we correct some of these things,
okay,
we'll continue being that musical chairs, talking, and nothing will be done.
Thank you. Let's give the young man a hand. Let's give the young man a hand. Okay, next. That's the third question. Okay, this will be the last question. We answer a question and then we go for another round of thoughts. This is a question for Dr. Manful.
I remember when the time came to choose a school, I went in with my mother and I was going to choose St. Augustine's. And as fate would have it, the lady filling the form went to Wesley Girls. So she looked at my mother, looked at me. She was my favorite teacher. She inspired me years. May God bless her. Dr. Sishen was her name. And she told my mother, this doesn't look like an Augustine's boy. This looks like an Mfantsipim school boy. I'm sure everybody here has a story to tell about their teachers. Coming to what you mentioned about teachers and motivating students, I was glad when I heard when your CV was being read, something to do with potatoes. I know that I have an uncle who's working with NASA, and the Americans are trying to plant sweet potatoes in Mars. You know, when a Ghanaian student maybe hears about potatoes, he's thinking about the earth, but the Americans are thinking about planting in Mars. What can we do to motivate our teachers, to motivate the students? Because if your teacher dreams, in my year group, we had a famous teacher called Shakespeare. He could rattle Shakespeare on and on and on, the profanities and the good ones, but we loved it. How do we motivate teachers to motivate these students to dream beyond the physical? Thank you.
I don't know whether. Thank you. Thank you very much. I thought my presentation was the least interesting, but it looks like everything is being thrown at me. But I will try to say what I think, and then if other panelists want to chip in, then they can do that. Let me start with Senior Titi Ofe. He talked about who defines fitness for purpose. I would like to be very simplistic in my response and say that the end user, right? The end user of the product determines whether this product that I have is fit for the purpose for which I want to use it. So by extension, parents are in there. They want to be able to say that I took my kid to school, I paid so much, I did this, I did that, this is the end result, and I'm happy with it. That's from the house. Secondly, it's the industry, the end user, the employer, wherever he's working, wherever he finds himself, the environment in which he finds himself, as well as the larger society. I remember when some of us left Mfantsipim and went to the university. The way we were identified as Mfantsipim boys was that our shirts were always tucked in. It took us a long time to unlearn that habit of tucking in your shirt. Because they see you at the first year in the university and your shirt is always tucked in, and they said, this boy went to Mfantsipim. They were just laughing at us. And we had to unlearn it. So for me, this is what I think, and I like to be very simplistic in my approach. The other gentleman, Legon, was talking about so many years in school and so on and so forth. Look, I think this is serious. Over the years, something has been happening to us in these developing countries or in this our part of the world. We have allowed other people to think for us. That is the hard fact. We have allowed other people to think for us because we are not thinking as hard as we should. I have worked with all kinds of people in all kinds of spheres. They are not better than us. The only thing is that they are more prepared than us. They have spent more time analyzing issues and telling you that you need to cut down on the number of years that your people spend in school. They are not talking about the product which comes out of it and whether it's fit for purpose. If they come with that proposal to you, and you have also sat down and made deep thought of this, and come out with a counter proposal and be able to convince them that we are not going to cut this thing down by 4 years, but we can cut it down by 2 years and not compromise on the product. And this is how we intend to fund it, and this is where we want to cut back, and this is where we want to do A, B, and C. They will listen. They will listen. Occasionally, they try to squeeze your hand, they try to blackmail you, they try to say, no, if you don't accept this, we don't want to do that. I'm sorry, I don't want to use this analogy, but we are too reactive. We just react to stimulus. But sometimes we should sit back and do a little bit of thinking and a little bit of reflection, and then we'll be there. Mauna, I think your question was very difficult. Because the simplistic answer to think about is that pay them more. But I don't think the money is a motivation in itself. A lot of people think that maybe money is the ultimate motivation, but it's not. We need to appreciate what our teachers are doing. We need to let them know that they would not spend 20, 30, 40 years in school teaching other people's children, and then when they have retired, they don't have a place to put their heads. We need to be able to say that their children would also go to school and come out and be as good as the children that they are teaching. If we are sitting down and doing a lot of thinking, I had a boss who, was an institution, and for once in that international institution, the boss was an African. And anytime he saw us, the Africans working there, he says, look, you know what you have to do? You have to think, and think. Because you have to run twice. And my big brother here will tell you when you're working, and Dr. Akutu as well, when you work in some of these international institutions, you have to run twice as fast as the non-African to be at the same level, more than twice as fast. But if you eat so much and you go and you sleep and you drink and you're happy, you are left behind. You don't just have to be better than the non-African. You have to be twice as good as him to be able to recognize that you are good enough. So it's not just good enough for us to be sitting here. We have to think and come with plans constantly. I don't know whether.
The number of years, the 6, 4, 7, 3 versus the 6, 3, 3, 4, reducing. It is not the number of years. I don't think that is the issue. The issue is the inputs that were neglected. The JHS, the workshops, and all the other things that, we lost sight of that. And so we didn't get the full benefit of the reduction of years. The corresponding inputs, were not there to really make the system work the way, And then how to motivate teachers. It is not part of the motivation, I think lies, I suppose, in continuous education of the teacher. How many secondary school teachers have ever had the opportunity to even attend one conference or workshop, anything upgrading their skills and learning any new things, It's not there. So this is part of the motivation. At the university level, the ability to do research, attend conferences and participate and all that and upgrade your learn and all that. These are part of the motivation, that it's not just a salary, So the school management issue, we need to look at this. Some teachers, after their qualification, never learned anything new. And they've been using other people's ideas, reading from books and the rest, and not being exposed anywhere. So I think we have to look at it broadly. It's not the number of years. Thank you.
Yeah. I think I'd like to add a word to what you said as far as not the number of years. And this is my practical example. I remember in Mfantsipim, I studied French for 4 years, from 2, from 3, from 4, and from 5. At the end of it, I could never speak French. 4 years old. But I'll tell you this. I used to teach adult education in the US. These are people who have come from China, Korea, Indonesia, who want to be citizens. And I'll be honest with you, in 6 months, you could speak English. Not because of the methodology, so much as the equipment that was available, the audiovisual equipment, so that you can hear what is being said, you can see the action that correlates to what is being said, and you see yourself a part of it. But what we will do, the subject-verb agreement, singular, plural, fill in the blanks. In 4 years, and sometimes say, what a waste of time. Had the methodology be a little different with the audio visuals, I'm telling you, we could be speaking French now. The other point I also want to raise is this. Quality is different from free. Go to any of the private schools. Many times I used to cite examples from outside the country, but we're going to cite examples right here in Ghana. Go to any of the private schools. Look at the equipment that they have. Look at the computer labs that they have there. Look at their smart boards. And then ask yourself, are those things free? They are expensive. So we want to begin to look at this again. Okay, I think we're going to have another round of four questions.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Some of my agitation actually been mentioned already, but I still would like to ask. I would have thought that talking about delivering quality secondary education in Ghana, you would start by defining what you meant by education itself. And then we will have means of measuring it. In other words, what I'm saying is that education must be contextually appropriate. In other words, if you are being educated in a country which is predominantly a desert place, for instance, I will judge your quality of education by the extent to which you can apply that education to produce, say, arable land, to produce food, and to produce infrastructure to feed the people. What is the purpose of our education? What are we measuring? What are we aiming at here in Ghana? What is our purpose? I heard people talk about digitalization and things like that. Well, digitalization is a very broad thing, but it all depends upon the purpose to which you use that digitalization for. Merely manipulating, being able to manipulate a digital piece of equipment does not validate the usefulness of that tool. It is how it is used. And therefore, I would very much like that perhaps we go back to look at the topic itself, try and define what we mean by the education, emphasizing the purpose for our country, Ghana. And through that, we'll be able to know whether we've done well or we need a paradigm shift in order to attain those kind of parameters that we wish to attain.
All right. Thank you so much, Senior. Okay, the next.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think during the presentation by one of the speakers, he made, I think Mr. Amuah, he said there was no question mark in front of the paradigm shift, which means that it is needed. But in my view, considering the exposition this evening, we needed to consider vocational training or technical skills, or in addition, entrepreneurial, because that will be one of the very important things that Senior Wright is talking about in terms of measuring. We go to some of these advanced countries, and right from secondary school level, these people are manufacturing things to make life easy, you know. But here, everything. This afternoon, I was in traffic and I saw some of these boys selling yams, about 4 or 5 rows of yams on the arms. And if you look at the biceps and the muscles of the forearm, it's all thick. I said, can't they devise a simple thing to carry this without putting so much pressure on their body? Simple deductive thinking. So if I look at the one who talked about the senior high school products, perhaps the paradigm shift should dwell on technical education. I know for a fact that in the past, the Germans did very well, a lot of investments, Birua, Accra, and some other places in the country. We have allowed all these things to collapse. To me, this should be the end of the so-called grammar school, coming out with technical capacity to be able to do things to make life easy. And I was a science student when I was in the Mfantsipim, but we did a lot of metal work and woodwork. When I had the opportunity to study for a higher degree in the United States, you go to the shop to buy from Target a bed. You see the bed assembled in the shop, but they will never bring you the bed when you buy. They will bring you to you in packets and this and that, and then they give you a diagram, and you use the diagram to assemble your own bed. If you did not have some level of training in technical capacity to do these things, you will be sleeping on the bed, and Lord knows what will happen to you. So, just to conclude, maybe a comment or two from our esteemed speakers on how to channel the basic education we get in SAS so that we have a product that can really serve the entrepreneurial and then the technical skills of our graduates. To me, the technical universities, personally, is not the answer. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Reverend Father Ernest Jima Ajimai, MOBA 97, chaplain of Ajimoto School. Prof, my question is on what you said on e-learning. Mr. Moderator said last year he spoke about mobile phones or electronics, allowed in schools, but he had a backlash, a lot of that. I want to find out, it's a good idea, how do we pursue it? Being a tutor, for example, I've done some experiment with my students. I teach Christian religious studies, very abstract subject, deal with the Bible and the issue of topography of Israel. Students find it very hard to learn. So for the past 5 years, I decided to get them videos from Genesis all the way to the New Testament to see what happened. So those who cannot read the Bible, and the classes, it kind of close because you have Muslims, and you have Christians and other children, all it's a selective subject. And by always the happenstance, their grades have improved tremendously because children can get the narrative, they can get the visuals. Research is done. And here is the case, we don't allow it here in Ghana. I know very well that students can abuse it. They will go to other pages or other places that is not allowed for them. But for research and to be independent and for teamwork, I think maybe the financial aspect, Freeman spoke about it, maybe because the internet facilities in the schools, who will pay it? Who will pay for the schools? Wireless, how do you assess it? But in Europe and America, for example, I left the Mfantsipim school and I had a scholarship to study in the US. In the US, I started from high school all the way to the university. In the high school, we have spring breaks, we have breaks where some of us who are not that good want to go do community work, go do some work and get some extra grades and add to your grades. I taught even here in the road system, after 6th form, there was a space for you to do national service. And then when you go to the university to after completing, you do national service, all helping the student to be independent. Now our children are not independent. The books that we're using are all archaic, all revised. What do we do?
Good.
Thank you very much.
Let's give the young man a hand. The last speaker.
All right, my name is David Yankson at Haffar, MOBA 2012. Okay, in relation to the issue of the carrying of yam that my senior boy talked about, you realize that when you go to K University, it is not that ingenuity is not there, it is not that creativity is not there. When you go to the College of Engineering, I completed last year, there are people that are on their necks day in, day out to develop these new things to affect technology. But then the problem is corporate Ghana and the government coming in to help develop these things. One of the speakers spoke about money, the fact that money is not the need for what will help teachers to be able to teach well, and I disagree. Even the Bible says money answers all things. Therefore, whichever thing we are discussing here today, whichever thing, whichever system, whichever gadgets is needed to facilitate education for the individual, money is needed. And a system, a democratic system that we run in a country such as this, we realize that the problem is leadership. That is the problem of us as a people. If they are good leaders, they make good decisions, they direct the monies, channel the money to the right places, and things will be done well. So I think the speakers, I think you have an opportunity to speak to the people in higher authority in this country. Kindly make an appeal on behalf of the people so that they stop the corrupt practices and all those things. The channel, that's the truth. Whatever we do, wherever we go, whichever corner we go to, the truth is that the monies that are supposed to be used to educate the ordinary Ghanaian, the F-cube in the 1992 Republican Constitution, is not done. The monies are not being used for the right thing. So let the politicians stop politicizing education and we move forward. That is the solution to the problem. Thank you.
Okay, after Prof. Reverend Father, I'm a Catholic too, from Legon. From Methodist to a Catholic. From a Methodist home, became a Catholic. My father never forgave me, but I have enjoyed it a lot. E-learning, the use of the internet, it's absolutely critical. That's the information superhighway now. When we were in school, there was no computer, there was no internet. We only learned from a few books, old editions, what the teachers had, and all that. There were no journals and what have you. But now you have all these online. So it is for the school to be able to, for instance, subscribe to certain journals, key journals in each of the subject areas, and which the teachers, it will help with. 70% of my lecture notes, updating my lecture notes, are from the internet. But maybe that is because I'm in the university setting. In the secondary school, that is a little bit challenging. Apart from those schools like Mfantsipim and others, which may be lucky to have functioning ICT centers. Most of the rural schools, for instance, there's no electricity, nothing to be able to. But that is the intent now. For knowledge acquisition, that is the intent. So maybe the moderators view that mobile phones may be permitted if only they will be used properly and not deviate into other areas that may not be profitable academically. I think it's something that ought to be looked at. So teachers must be conversant with it, and also that helps in the style of teaching, the pedagogy, the problem solving approach. Much of these ideas can be obtained from the internet, and so the e-learning is absolutely essential. There's no other way about for the system to really look at it, and how. So that is one. The other question was on what is education and all that, and secondary education in particular. There are different types. You have the general secondary education and then the specific technical, as my senior boy, Dr. Manful. Is that Dr. Manful? Yes. My senior boy, Dr. Manful, when I came to Lower City, he was in Upper 6. So, the technical education, I agree with you. It has been de-emphasized. We are talking more about general secondary education with the regular humanities and the basic sciences. But that doesn't mean that is unimportant. It is very important. You need to start from the basic science to be able to apply your knowledge in the applied science in the technical field. So both segments of the system are very critical, and if we're able to develop on secondary level very well, the universities will have less of a burden, because it takes a long time really to bring students up. The secondary segment is very weak. They come, concepts, reading, the language is really something else. Students don't read. You ask students to read, and they are fighting with you, graduate students, even PhD students.
My PhD student yesterday, I had a class with a PhD student, and I had to check on this and check on that, check. I'm now providing internet sources for PhD students. So you can imagine what is happening at the secondary level where the opportunities may not be there. Yeah.
Thank you very much. You see, I want to drop in one little word. Sometimes let us sit back and reflect. This world is changing so quickly, you don't have an idea. It is changing so fast and so quickly. I remember we were probably one of the last people to be using logbooks and slide rules in school. I think a lot of those who came after us probably don't know what a slide rule is. In those are times when electronic calculators started coming up, it was forbidden to use electronic calculators. And those ones were very basic in our exams. You shouldn't, you'll be cheating. Now, I remember also so well, I was working at the Food Research Institute. That was in the early 90s, probably 1991, that kind of thing. When the first laptop computer came into that institution, you know what we did? We built a special room. We bought a special air conditioner and put that desktop computer in that room. And you needed to go there. You can't go there without permission. And that was, I don't know what it was, probably a 386 or 286. Those people who remember computers in those days. So what are we talking about today? 5 years' time, all the things that we are talking about will be completely outmoded. So if the senior boy, my reaction to you saying that cell phones should be used, I would have said, no, don't do it. But 2 years from now, I would have seen how right you are. The fact of the matter is that what you should tell these young people is that the internet always leaves a trail. Wherever you go can be found out. Whatever you do can be found out. It is not a secret, even if you are sitting in your room and manipulating your computers. I remember I worked in a certain institution somewhere where you are not supposed to go on social network. The people sitting in the ICT were monitoring everything. One technician was getting on and chatting online with somebody, and they picked the phone and called the boss and said, go tell this person that we know what she's doing. She should stop. And that stopped everything. So what you do on your phone can be monitored. What you do on your computer can be monitored. It is not a secret. And once people know that, they begin to think what to do. In my office where we worked, all the doors and windows were glass. Everybody going around sees everybody in his or her office. No locked doors. Everybody sees everybody in his or her office. If you go to a Japanese office, it's like a classroom. You have about 10 very senior people sitting in one small office and everybody. How can you be talking to another person when you're in an environment like that? We should create an environment which will stop people from doing the wrong thing. And for me, I think that is a major step forward.
Yes, my senior boy did talk about the end result of education, as in what shall it profit us as a nation if we learn some subjects which are of no use to the country as a whole. I do agree perfectly. You recollect that there were some subjects as civics, health science, all these things have been phased out. And yet this same health science, we spend a whole day on what we call sanitation day. When the kids can know that they know how to throw things in the dustbin, it can be actually an actual topic that can be taught. But we don't see the interest in it, and then we waste time, a whole day, we don't put rubbish heaps, nothing is taught. So I do think that we should learn, or the curriculum itself should change to benefit the nation as a whole. So I do agree with you, senior boy, that sometimes we learn things which are so abstract, which have no use to the nation.
Yes, to add a little to what the panelists have said and the contributions, I think in all these, we can't rule out the contribution of the state. Leadership is course. So what direction is the state shown or given? If we want to prioritize education, it must go down to the tiniest rock or the tiniest block of sand on our soil, that education is number one, and it has a knock-on effect on every other sector of our economy. Beyond that, when government sets the right tone, we need an intersectoral approach. What we are discussing here today, for instance, ICT, we know that we need this in education. What is a collaboration between, say, the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Communication, the telcos, and industry? It's like everybody is on their own. So until we also realize that when it's all said and done, whatever we want to do, we need to set our priorities right. And we need to stick to it and have a collaborative approach to all of this. I mean, we'll be going round in circles. Thank you.
I think we're going to have timekeeper. We're going to have the last round of 4 questions. Good. And we're going to start with Senior Jesse. Oh, okay, one there. Senior Jesse.
Good evening, everybody. There's so many questions going through my mind. My name is Mr. Ferguson, MOBA 87. There's so many things going on, but I just want to ask a simple question. Is it the case that we are forgetting about the analytic way of learning and wanting to go the audiovisual, as in e-learning and that sort of stuff? Because if you're looking at learning styles, we can't be looking at only one thing and forgetting about the others. If you look at the technical aspect, which is tactile and aesthetic, we are not looking at it. And this time it's all computer stuff. So my suggestion, number one, is that why don't we look at a hybrid system? And let's look at a situation where we do something to suit everybody's learning style. And I think we will go forward with that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Anis, what I'm going to say is not an indictment on the management of this place. It's an observation I'll make everywhere I go. When I enter this room, I look up and try to count the number of bulbs which have been burnt out. So I ask myself, what has gone wrong? Are they saving power, or there's no property manager around? Or when the building was put up, no provision was made for high-rising ladder which can be used to replace the bulbs or not. Then I look around and I saw what I see everywhere I go. There's a glazing there which cuts off the fresh air. Then you put on thick curtains which also cut off the light from outside. Then we install air conditions and bright lights when we don't have sufficient energy. Education and paradigm shift needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Love is my name. A former student of Tamale Polytechnic, now Tamale University, Technical University. Professor Yanka, you said Professor Yankson, thank you very much. You said the motivation at the secondary level. You said motivation at the secondary level is when you talk about salaries. Another motivation that I see is every teacher at the secondary level is expecting that at the end of the year, he or she will win the best teacher award. Yes, that's another motivation there. Now, the last speaker, Mr. Chairman, I want to suggest that if MOBA will propose to the Ministry of Education to have a national dialogue on how we can fund the senior high school, the free senior high school. Because the point that the last speakers made, his points they are excellent points. And if you propose to the ministry and they accept the proposal, I would suggest that, as you said, the man should go and, should be there to go and give the presentation that he has given this evening. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Moderator, since this is the last set of questions, I would plead that we take 3 more and we close. Thank you very much. I'm Atuisiam, MOBA 82. My issue is to do with leadership. So I don't know whether it falls under governance or... You mentioned an interesting point that we just appoint headmasters maybe because they've spent 20 or 25 years in a school teaching a particular subject. I think that it's a critical issue that we need to look at. If you are bringing this point here, even quality education and everything falls under, it falls under leadership, quality leadership for that matter. So we can start from our school. I was at the rector's, I forgot the term used, the day that they put the rector on his seat. I was there. And one of them raised an issue that their parents were trained at GIMPA those times. So the idea was that whoever headed an institution or started an institution somewhere went to GIMPA for training. So it's something that we can all look at. Because the headmaster should be somebody who is an all-rounder, somebody who can market, somebody who can negotiate. It's not only about our school, but something that all the schools can look at so that we'll be able to improve quality of leadership in the schools. Now, my controversial question here is that if you look at the school where we are all coming from, the people trained those times, and even currently, I think, are people who were trained for civil service. Talking about Sekyi, etc., and the big men here in seated. How many of us get into education? So to get to a time, you wouldn't even get a headmaster with a Methodist background, with an Mfantsipim background to manage the school. So what do? Then we keep on hanging on to it. This man is not an old boy, so he can't head the Mfantsipim. This man is not this, but you know very well that the person is good and can transform the school. So paradigm shift, old boys. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. My name is Salif Dabri, GBC Radio Ghana. I have 2 questions, one for Mr. Lord Freeman and then one for Dr. John Manful. The question for Lord Freeman is, he spoke on funding SHS. Now, he made a very fantastic recommendation that if Ghanaians as a nation will take agriculture seriously, he believes we can, make a headway as far as funding SHS is concerned. If you look at 2014, we imported rice into the country to the tune of $650 million rice alone, 2014. $650 million. Whether his recommendation, if we will take agriculture seriously, I also side with him that we can, fund SHS. Now, my question is, funding SHS. For me, if we can seal certain loopholes as far as corruption is concerned in this country, we can fund SHS. Because if you look at the 2012 Audit Activities report, the monies that went into people's pockets as far as corruption is concerned, if you can seal these potholes, this money is more than the money that is being used to fund the free senior HS. 2012 Auditor General's report. So we can easily, if we can see all these loopholes. Now, lastly on this, the funding. How do we do as a nation? For me, I try to look at it this way, that senior high school, if Mr. Lord Freeman is saying that the failing of Princeton High School. For instance, we have said the PTAs, not a PTA, according to Mr. Freeman, it looks as if they are being relegated to the background. If you look at all boys associations, these are all very vibrant associations that assist in funding their senior high schools. So now, are we being told that because the government is absorbing free senior high school, these two organizations, I don't know where lies their role now as far as funding senior high school is concerned. Now, my second question is to lastly, I'm saying if you look at quality senior high school graduate, for me, we are not being fair to students of some schools. One, you can't compare students who attend, say, the elite schools, the Amuah, the Mfantsipim, and the rest, to schools, say, coming from Assoc, coming from La. No, I'm coming. Let me make my point. These are institutions that have all facilities. They have all facilities. My point is, they sit for the same examination. But if you go to this elite school, they have all facilities. As far as facilities are concerned, they sit for the same examination. Now go to Amuah or the elite schools and look at their laboratories. The facilities that they have compared to the schools that are mentioned, you go to the school, look at their laboratories. They don't have such facilities, but they sit for the same examination.
All right. Thank you.
That's my point.
Give the young man a hand. Okay, the last question. The last one.
Thank you very much. I want to appreciate the organizers of this program. I've benefited a lot as a teacher. Please, to Prof and any of the panelists. We're talking of ICT, using technology. And, I want to find out how GES itself is using ICT in terms of documentation and everything. Before they are expecting the schools and students to use it, you go and receive a lot of files, and the system is not so flexible. Yes, they are promoting ICT over a decade now. And secondly, I want to ask how influential the promoting or the promotion exercise of teachers is affecting education or learning, teaching and learning exercise in our schools. How influential has it been? Is the process better? How you go and line up teachers to have a promotion exercise, and at the end, what is the evaluation so far? Again, I want to stress on what you said. Round teachers are also been hearing normal slogan. There is no money from the business and then the head teachers. Yes, we expect the teachers to be improved in terms of capacity building for critical thinking. If you don't go for workshops and you don't allow teachers to go for other training sessions, how can they improve themselves to improve the learning of the students? Again, placing priorities on some subjects. Not that I'm against maths and science, but look at it's only maths and science that every student is charged about 5 cities, the whole nation, and then they will have maths and science quiz. Yes, the number of students who fail maths and science today is very high than even the vocational school subjects that are not prioritized. How are we going to look at that when we need quality education?
Okay, give the young man a hand. Give the young man, that's very good. Okay, we're going to have you answer 1 or 2 questions, and then Manful, we're going to have you too, and then we want a couple of questions from the ladies.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The gentleman mentioned the 2014 rice import bill. Well, for 2016, it's actually ballooned to about 1.2 million. So actually, what you quoted for 2014 is way lower than what it is now. I think your question was what happens to the PTAs and then the donor communities. Government is saying that these contributions are voluntary, but you see, once we say something, I mean, even the richest man in this world wants something for free. So once it goes out there and the impression is created as though it is free, what you are doing is you are eroding that sense of commitment that these donor communities have towards their schools. It becomes a matter of willpower. That's why in my delivery I stated that I think that the government needs to reverse that position and insist that these contributions from PTAs should still be done. We can't leave it and make it optional. It's going to drive directly to the heart of the IGFs. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I just want to go straight to the point in your point about the fact that they're going to write the same exam because other people are. They have to write the same exam. We don't have a choice. We can't say you do this exam because you don't have this or you do that. What we have to do is that those who do not have the facility, you try to bring them up and let them get a facility. And you will be surprised if you go to some of these so-called elite schools and look at their science labs and those kind of things. It's heartbreaking. When we were students, every child or every student could titrate, and you practically did something yourself. Now 6, 7, 8 students have to do one person does it, the rest look on. So we are falling back. As for the rights, I don't want to talk about it because it's my main area. If I want to talk about it, we're not going today. We have problems in this country and we have to try to solve those problems. One thing I have realized, and I think it was Senior Anisa I was talking to, in the last month I have spoken to 2 ministers of state. I was surprised at the ease with which I got an appointment to see these ministers. I was pleasantly surprised. But I was a bit concerned. And my concern was that everything anybody is thinking about is based on the 4-year political calendar. It's not their fault. That's our system. Everything that they are thinking about is, I have to do this within 2, 3, 4 years. Some of these things are not doable in 2, 3, 4 years. They're not doable. So unless we get long-term planning, sustained long-term planning over a certain area, and tell some of people who find themselves in this position is that it's not for you to finish it. Just start it. Somebody will build on it. At the end of the day, it will be built for the country. So this is just what I want to say. And I think that once again, we need some cool heads here. And we need some great thinkers. I think we should go and look for the brightest and best of our sons. And they are the people who can help us. Prof.
Well, the last questioner, a number of points, concerns raised, ICT, promotion of teachers, GS, whatever it is that may really hinder, quality education, either from the teachers front or the student front, the institutional front, management, ought to be looked at so critically and ought to be looked at in an integrated manner, because this single item approach will not help. So if you are promoting quality teaching, you should also think about motivation. You should think about what motivates individuals, that they should be able to progress through the system. So if teachers will remain at the same post for years without any promotion, that is very, discouraging for them. So we have to look at the promotion system clearly. And again, this is where leadership may also be very important, where headmasters or head teachers may prompt the teachers if there is any application that the teachers have to put in and what they have to support the applications with and all that. Leadership is very important in that respect. So you don't just fold your arms and then allow the teacher to sit and hope that someday he or she may be promoted. Now, I mean, we have to, the paradigm shift should include all these things. Leadership role in getting teachers, move on. Leadership role in pushing teachers to, look for and seek, higher allowance, education-wise, professional development-wise, and all that. You need teachers that will move the system, and therefore leadership to also motivate teachers. It's not always just the money, but these are things that will really help. If people are promoted quicker and they are due for promotion, and promotion comes, I'm sure they are happy, and that will also motivate them. Okay.
Thank you very much. Now we're getting to our young ladies here. Let's give the young ladies a hand. They've been sticking with us all night. Very good. Now we're going to take about 2 or 3 questions from you. Okay? We don't want you to be passive students. We want you to be active, proactive. So a couple of questions that you have. One of you had your answer. Good. Can we hear from the young lady, please? Where's the mic? Good. Right there.
Good evening. Please, I'm Vaidaya from Accra Legal Society School. Please, my suggestion is that the boarding students can have, as in, all the items listed by the president of the country. But as for boarding fee, I think they should pay. I think they are cheating with the day students. They are paying everything. And then as for day, I think they should pay and then admission fee. And as in for the day students, they are only taking a meal the whole day. And then they are excluding with the Form 3s and Form 2 students. If they are paying for the boarding fee and everything for them, at least the meal should be set for Form 3s and Form 2s. That's my suggestion.
Okay, very good. Okay, another one. Another one.
Okay, good evening. And my question is, how can quality education be achieved while too many students are packed in a classroom? Because it's actually going to prevent teachers from assessing classworks and project works. So I want to ask that how can quality education be achieved while the students are too many in a class? And I was suggesting that one way of motivating teachers is it depends on the students, because if a teacher should teach a student and the student is able to pass at the end of the day, the teacher will be like, okay, I think I'm doing a great job. So it will ginger him or her to do a lot of research in order to help other students to pass as well. And also, I want to ask that the e-learning, although it's going to help with the students, it will allow us to cover up our subjects field. I want to ask how is it going to, what are the implications on teachers? I mean, is it going to let them be idle because they'll be like, oh, there's e-learning, the technology learning. So if there's, let's say, assignment, they'll be like, we should go and find it instead of them researching it themselves.
Good. Okay, let's get the last question from one of the ladies.
Good evening. Please, I'm talking about the students being on their own, and our professor was talking about students being able to be on our own by contributing to things. And then when you come to our school like this, we have literature class, we have different subjects, but like because the government has made it free education, we need textbooks. and the government cannot provide for us all that we need in our education. But since it says free education, the teachers won't have that audacity to sell certain books to us. So we will be in the school suffering and then using the books that are not enough for us. And then we, the Form 2s and the Form 3s now, when the former president was there, we used to pay free. He used to pay free progressively SHSP, but now it is 0.00, meaning it has been added to our fees, and he's saying free education when some of us, our parents, voted for him, and he is our president. Since he is our president, anything that happens to us, he has to account for it. So if he is doing free education, he has to account for every student in Ghana, not some.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to answer that.
Please, why is it that those who completed that last year, they are not part of the free SHS? And my second question, please, the free, please, our president has just started this free education. Please, is it going to last for long, or when a new president comes to power, is it going to continue with it, or just end it just like that?
Yes, these are difficult questions, and no, they are very difficult because unfortunately there's no government appointed nominee here. I don't see any of them because it's a question which is directed directly to government. But Senior Manful made a point when he was talking that it appears that everything, any plan or agenda of anybody is geared towards just 4 years. That is the problem. You see, that is the problem. If we don't have a long-term solution, we'll just keep on doing knee-jerk reactions. And then that will get us nowhere. I cannot sit here and answer and say that after 4 years, this free SHS would or has come to stay or hasn't come to stay, because every government has its own priority. But if we have a national agenda, I think that will put things more in perspective, and we'll know how best to sort out all these problems. Unfortunately, I said we cannot answer because it's always a policy direction by any government. But we just try and advise. If they take it, so be it.
Okay, well, I think the lady, one of the young ladies asked about the fees, and then also the use of digital technology, whether it's going to create teacher dormancy or something like that. Well, I want to narrate with an experience that I had back in tech when I was a teaching assistant. I was handling, the third years and the final year. So they knew me. I had just completed my first degree, and I was teaching them. And then at one lecture, someone asked me a question that for the 4 years I had never ever contemplated on. I had to think on my toes, and within seconds give him a very suitable answer. What had the student done? He had gone to research, done a lot of research on the internet. So rather, instead of creating teacher apathy or dormancy, I think it's going to make teachers set up and not the other way around. On the subject of the feeding and other things, it's a tough call. Again, I mean, these are the feeding problems that will come up. I think Doc gave a wonderful description. He says it's an expedition. I don't know if that's the right term that Doc used, that this SHS funding thing that we've started is more like an expedition. As we go along, these problems will surface. Our wish and our hope is that the powers that be will take all of them on board and quickly and appropriately nip all of them in the bud so that we move ahead from there. So maybe there should be a student forum on the free senior high school policy itself. That would really help. Thank you.
Okay.
You see, I just want to say one thing. I'm not trying to answer the student's question. And I think Laud has said it all at the last bit. These young people are smart, intelligent, thinking beings. We need to listen to them. And I think that we should, as a country, open avenues for these young students to tell us what they think. All the questions here, all the most difficult questions have come from them. We are not able to answer them. We don't have answers to them. And I think that those who have the answers to them, who are in policy, who are making the decisions, should listen to these young people and answer these questions and address their concerns. I just want to say, you were the one who talked about large numbers in the class. How many are you in a class? Was I think outside there, some of these 87 guys were my students. And I want to say one thing. When I was doing national service in the school, I had a big, quote-unquote, fight with Mr. Dontry. I told him there was one class which had 45 students in the class and the number was too large and I couldn't teach it. I couldn't give them effective homework. I couldn't mark. I couldn't do anything. I said, sir, you know what? Please do something about this for me. He said, I can't. I said, 45 in a class. I can't do it. And then he pulled me to my side and said, you know something? So he didn't talk about faithful aid. He said, you are my son. I said, yes, sir. I taught you in this school, yes. And you have come back. So help me out. Go and teach them. And I stopped complaining. Now it's 61. Professor Foreje, I was discussing this with him this afternoon, and he said that there are what? How many in the medical class? 200 and something? Prof, how many? Yes, about 200 in a medical school class. So even if you do well and you go to medical school, you'll be 200 in a medical school class. We have to do some serious thinking now. We have to. Things are getting out of hand, and I think that we should not be raising flags and shouting. Things are rapidly getting out of hand. Let me take one more minute. They're talking about rice imports. Yeah, I know in 2000 it was $100 million. Now somebody's talking about $1 billion. Something is not right somewhere. I know that 70% of the rice that we eat in this country is imported. I know because I work with rice and I've worked with it for many years. 70% of it that we eat is imported, and every year the figures are going up. The answers are not very simple. They are deep, and we have to start thinking seriously. Otherwise, things will get out of hand.
All right. All right. Shall we give our panelists a big round? Shall we please? Okay. All good things must come to an end. And I think my son is going to be very brief. And I will take it from there. First of all, what we learned from Prof. Yankson in terms of digital education, e-learning, takes me to a question that I raised some time ago. The question was, what is the head supposed to be used for? Do you remember that one? So the head is supposed to be used for carrying load. And then I said, no, the head can do better than that. Especially these days, if we kick in learning and that sort of thing. And also, if we focus on student-centered learning. When we have large class sizes, it can also be an opportunity for young people to diversify and begin to look at the different things that they could do with curriculum. But if we have 61 students and we are going to teach them the same way, that is a problem. 61 students, as far as I'm concerned, is a battalion. What can we use them for productively? So these are some of the things that we have to kick in as far as pedagogy. What is the senior writer was asking the question, what is education for? Education is to raise our standards of living and also a standard of living where there are no disease and that sort of thing. What can the 61 students help in that particular respect? These are the things that we want to begin to look at. And then we are looking at Ekow, Amuah, Sekyi, who talks about governance. And what I like about him is that we shifting the paradigm backwards or forwards. And here, seminar, especially when we look at mission schools, and my take is this: it doesn't matter whether it's government school or mission school, the schools have to manage professionally. And as one of the gentlemen said, it doesn't have to be an old boy or an old girl. Who is it that can manage the school professionally? These are the questions that we want to look at. But then I wrote an article about Cape Coast. Wesley Girls is there. Holy Child is there. St. Augustine's is there. Adisada is there. Ghana National and the rest of it. These are schools that have raised people to the highest international levels. So why are we not developing Cape Coast as a hub for international education? You know, I tend to compare Cape Coast to Boston. You'll be surprised the amount of money that Boston, the city of Boston alone, makes every year, bigger than Ghana's GNP, because they attract students from all over the world, so that we can begin to look at these schools internationally, not the Saito mentality that we have. I also want to look at Dr. Manful, and here I think the role is cut for you. The government now has in place school feeding programs. How can we use agriculture in every school to help that way? And ladies, I'm talking to you. In your school, can you grow pears? Can you grow your own lettuce? Can you grow your own tomatoes? Begin to think about it, because you have to eat. That is where you come in, as far as greenhouses. And I mentioned greenhouses for a certain reason. I went through Silicon Valley. I mean, from San Joaquin Valley to Silicon Valley, where Facebook and the rest of them are. And you'll be surprised how they are using greenhouses to effect. The benefit of a greenhouse is that you control the conditions. You control the pests that are coming in. You control the water intake and that sort of thing. So these are the kinds of things that I hope for Manful. You're going to lead a charge in this school that in Mfantsipim, for example, begin to grow some of their own food. Do you have a deal on that one? We talk about it. We have to do it. And then last but not the least, we're looking at Freeman as far as funding. And again, his focus really is on agriculture. What is it that we can do that will cut down the massive amounts of money that we spend on imports? And then we want to also begin to look at corruption. And again, I gave you a homework, remember? And I'm going to repeat it. Go on the internet. In the past, how many years? 10 years. And read what? Exactly. And find out how monies were used at the district level, at the regional levels, and that should inform you. Because you are not going to be passive observers. Are you with me? You are going to be proactive, learner-centered type of education that you need. And you are going to represent that. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for such a wonderful evening. And Nana, over to you.
Thank you, sir. It's a slight program change. The closing prayer will be said by somebody else. We have Reverend Ernest Ajiman of MOBA 97 who will say the closing prayer. Not yet. I'll call you when it's. I want to make a few announcements. If you look at the back of the program, there's a MOBA fundraising dinner dance on the 14th of October. There are tickets available outside for you. And then I think I will just take the liberty to just a few seconds comment on something that Prof. Yankson said, that he felt that if you went to Mfantsipim, the ICT lab is, be better than some of the village schools. But I don't know the last time Prof went to Mfantsipim. The ICT lab is just like a village school ICT lab. I think what has kept us going or has given us the good results that we have is the tradition that we have. I think maybe when you enter Mfantsipim, you get about maybe 40%, the 60% you work on. I mean, that's it, because the facilities are no better than any other school in the country. And I think it's a tradition that we've carried on, which I suspect we're losing. So, thank you very much. On behalf of the Functional Boys Association, Mfantsipim, and I'd like to thank you all for attending this highly interesting and engaging event. As I think we shall continue discussing far into the future, and hopefully we'll come up with some results. I will now ask Reverend Father Ernest Achiman, MOBA 97. Are you an Anglican priest or a Catholic priest? Anglican. We were arguing back there that Achimota chaplain is always an Anglican. Yes, my grandpa was a chaplain there, so I know somebody said, oh, you're a Catholic. So please give us an Anglican prayer.
Thank you very much. Shall we please rise and pray? Let us pray. In the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Amen. So, Heavenly Father, we are grateful unto you for a wonderful night, wonderful discussion on education. It is our prayer, Lord, you pour your blessings on MOBA, Mfantsipim School, Wesley Girls, and all schools in Ghana. May our thoughts, suggestions, and what we need as a paradigm shift to move education forward come to pass. We know the powers that be will hear by your grace. So next year when we meet, it'll be time for testimony for the good things you have done for us. Send us home safely by the power of your Holy Spirit, and the blessing of God the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit rest upon you this evening, tomorrow morning, and forevermore. Amen. Thank you very much. Please, you can take your seats.
Thank you. The other announcement is in true Methodist tradition. We have soft drinks and and some small chops. We shall sing the school song before we depart. Again, I need help from someone who was in the school choir. It's risky. Who can help me out? Okay. Dream shakan, dream shakan, dream shakan. Indiano. 1, 2. Dream shakan, dream shakan, dream shakan. Indiano. Dream shakan, dream shakan, dream shakan. Indiano. Dream shakan, 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 dream shakan, dream shakan. Dream shakan, Indiano. Yemutaipa. Senana longo kaipa. Wazijumapa. Weyela kitwifu. Yemutaipa. Senana longo kaipa. Wazijumapa. Weyela kitwifu. Yemutaipa.
Hello. Refreshment outside when you get out there on your left. On your left side, you get out of the door, you take the left. Wesley girls, we are waiting for you for the refreshments.
Yeah.